Hello and welcome to UMD News for this hour. I am Shimelis Gebremichael. In the headlines, clashes in western Ethiopia leave 19 dead. Ethiopian police refuse to release journalists granted bail. Despite the release of a handful of journalists in the country, the detentions and violations of rights have still continued in many parts of the country. Ethiopian Prime Minister Office Press Secretary talks about humanitarian truce provisions. The Press Secretary Shimelis also provided a clue on direct peace talk between the federal and Tigray governments. And now we'll move into the news in details. We invite you all to stay with the program. In the meantime, please do not forget to like and share our programs and subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is UMD News with me, Shimelis Gebremichael. And now, the news in detail. First up, clashes in western Ethiopia leave 19 dead. The authorities in western Ethiopia have vowed to ensure order following violent confrontations between security forces and armed men, which have left several dead. According to BBC News, among those killed was a district administrator. While the war in the country's north has received much of the attention, Ethiopia has seen a surge in deadly violence in various parts of the country. The head of the police force in Benishangul Gumuz region, Harun Umar, said our men opened fire on his forces in the remote town of Belom. In the battle that followed, he told the BBC at least 19 people were killed. The region has seen an increase in armed clashes in recent years, and tens of thousands of people have fled their homes, with a truce now in place in the north of the country, where the army has been fighting ground forces. The government has launched operations in several other areas to control what it calls lawlessness. However, violent incidents have continued to be reported, raising questions over success of the measures. Ethiopian police refuse to release journalists granted bail. Ethiopian authorities have refused to release 3 detained journalists despite the court order they be given bail. Solomon Shumiye, Maaza Mohammed, and Temesgen Desalegn appeared recently before the federal first instance court and were granted bail. However, the federal police force immediately appealed the judge's decision to the High Court. The High Court overruled the lower court's decision, and the 3 journalists were returned to police custody. Their lawyer, Henok Aklilu, told the VOA he was expected that he happen but will continue to seek their release. He said these things have been very much common when politically motivated cases come to court, especially journalists who were very much critical of the regime. The 3 journalists are among 19 arrested last month in a crackdown aimed at reporters who have been critical of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government. Government accuses the journalists of inciting violence and disturbing the country's peace through their work. Henok told VOA it is not clear when the journalists will next appear in court. Authorities have accused Temesgen Desalegn, editor of a privately owned Petah magazine, of inciting violence and public disturbance through unspecified interviews published on YouTube. Solomon Shumiye, a current affair talk show host, is accused of inciting violence on his show. It is not clear what accusation Maaza Mohammed faces. The Committee to Protect Journalists has condemned the arrest of the 19 and called for the Ethiopian government to unconditionally release them. Henok said he has filed an appeal before the Supreme Court so the case does not become a criminal matter but is instead handled under Ethiopia's media proclamation law, which prohibits the detentions of journalists. Later on, we have heard some few journalists have been released from the detention, despite the release of few journalists, and the detentions and violations of the rights of journalists and media institutions have continued all over the country. Regional and international organizations are condemning the act, saying that it is a campaign against the freedom of speech. And finally, Ethiopian Prime Minister Office Press Secretariat talks about humanitarian truce provisions. For the first time in months, the Foreign Press Secretary for the Office of Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Belenia Siyum, has confirmed that there were discussions between the federal Tigrayan forces on the humanitarian truce. While briefing journalists about the engagement of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's recent participation in meetings with key African leaders, Belenia said the government has been facilitating aid in Tigray, Amhara, and Tigray, while not mentioning the status of the siege in Tigray, claiming millions of lives. She addressed the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front (TPLF) as belligerent. She also accused TPLF of conscripting for the next attacks. Asked about the mass arrest of journalists and closure of media institutions in the country, Belenia said institutions and professionals, including the online media outlets, were chased for fomenting the war in the country. The intention of the arrest is to secure the safety of the population, she added. According to the press secretariat, the operations are conducted by the regional governments, not the federal body, and illegal smuggling and usage of armaments are the causes of the mass arrests, mainly in the Amhara region. Meanwhile, the United States welcomes the progress in securing more regular access to humanitarian assistance to communities in need in Afar, Amhara, and Tigray regions of Ethiopia. According to the U.S. press release, in the past 7 days, in the last week, more than 1,100 trucks have reached Tigray to deliver life-saving food, malnutrition treatment, and health supplies, and other essential relief items to those who are most vulnerable because of the hard work of all humanitarians committed to saving lives. Dear viewers and listeners, with that we come to the end of the news for today. This has been UMD Media with me, Shimelis Gebremichael. Please do not forget to like and share our program and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can follow our programs through our other platforms as well to become the first to know what is going on in Ethiopia, the whole Africa, and world in general. You can easily reach us via our email address, newstips2020umd@gmail.com. Thank you for watching and have a good one.